Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this lovely Wednesday morning. Um, I'm going to do some quick thoughts and just talk about what's going on in California and LA. I've got my little notebook of some of the things I want to talk about. I decided to do this video today. This is Wednesday. Obviously, this stuff was kind of happening over the weekend, but I was wanted to give it some time and I wanted to kind of see how things played out. I am not a newscaster. My responsibility is not to be the first on the scene. I'm obviously running for Senate. I wanted to make sure that I kind of understood what was going on, and I wanted to see how this escalation was actually going to result in where we are. So, that all being said, from day one, I definitely had my set of thoughts, but I was just waiting to see how both the sort of local, state, and federal government was kind of responding to this before I put in my thoughts. So, first of all, before we even start, just get this out of the way. I do not condone any of the violence, the destruction, all the vandalism, all that stuff. We do not want to live in a society where fear and violence is a part of our everyday lives. Obviously, that is the case for many folks, but that should not be an excuse to perpetuate it. That should be a goal to eradicate. So I think that that's an important thing. I also want to start out with the idea that this is somehow a distraction from the other things that are going on in Trump's, administration. There's some new like Pete Hegseth things, and of course we have the big beautiful bill that is working its way through the Senate right now. I would like to maybe provide a counterpoint that I don't think distraction is the right word. I think multiple things can be happening at the same time. And I think that the conversations around the bill, for example, the budget bill, are very, very important. And we can have those conversations while also talking about what is going on in LA. And as of this morning, we're actually starting to see some more raids pop up in other states. And I believe as of this recording, Texas appears to have nationalized their National Guard. So we're starting to see more and more of these things pop up. But don't buy into this distraction. Even if it is a distraction, this is actually very in line with what a lot of people know that Trump wants. So distraction or not, this is perfectly in line with the direction that the administration has been wanting to go for a very long time and has said as much in numerous statements over time or whatever. So that's just something I want to kind of get off of the floor, those two things. So obviously, if you're watching this video, then you're probably familiar with at least the high level of what's going on. The Trump administration has sent in the National Guard as well as Marines. Again, this is Wednesday morning. So if other stuff has happened in the meantime, then that just adds on to the conversation that's going on. But it is important to note that, first of all, this was not asked for. The mayor of LA didn't ask for this. The governor of California didn't ask for this. And so it is kind of interesting that we are mobilizing troops for something that has not been requested yet. Now, the president does have the ability to mobilize troops under very specific conditions, and this is where like the Insurrection Act is coming about. And a lot of people believe this is kind of like testing the waters, testing the fences of being able to use the Insurrection Act to put troops into anywhere that they want, right? So I think it is very telling. Now, there's lots of people that will be like, well, they're not asking for it because they're incompetent and they don't know what they're doing. I was like, that may be the case. I don't believe that is true. But if you believe that's true, okay, so Governor Newsom and whoever else are incompetent and they don't know what they're doing. We still have a law and legal system that prevents the president from using active military troops on our streets. So incompetence or not, there is a process that could be followed to do these type of things, and it is not being followed. And that's actually very concerning, very worrying. So nobody really asked for this. The LAPD this morning, again, as of this morning, The Los Angeles Police Department also said that they were contacted and they don't want this help. They don't need it. I think there will be a lot of conversations after this is done about how the Los Angeles Police Department has handled this situation, and those are conversations that we can have later on down the road as we acquire more information and we really see what's going on. But there are some very, very concerning videos about the use of force by the Los Angeles Police Department. But those are things that we will handle in a later date. I'm not going to talk about those right now, but suffice it to say they're very concerning and very worrying. Before I go in too deep, I also do want to say that the way I look at these things is that if you are a part of the police department or a part of public safety or part of, the judicial system or whatever, that the responsibility first and foremost falls on you to make sure that your colleagues are acting in the best professional efforts that they can. And if you are a law enforcement officer or you're involved in law enforcement of the judicial system in some way, then you should be the first ones who want to make sure that everybody is acting the best that they can, because that is really what this comes down to. Is like, this is your industry and you want people acting, in the best way. I talk about, so my background being in healthcare and then also in sort of video games and software, like I am generally one of the first people to sort of, at least if not speak out, like sort of publicly on a stage, to at least internally within our ecosystem to make sure that we are doing things the best way that we can, because I want my industry to be the best that it can. And I want it to be professional. I want it to be mature and act in adult ways and respectful ways. And so maybe you can call this like a little call out, whatever you want to call it. Maybe just a little push for those that are in the law enforcement agency. Like, now is the time for you to step up and make sure that your fellow colleagues are putting their best professional foot forward. And I think that will go a long way towards the next parts of what I'm going to talk about, as well as how we can go about making sure that in the future, our law enforcement agencies are acting in the most appropriate and professional manner possible. So just throwing that out there, do with it what you will. All right. So we have got military on the streets of LA right now. We have the National Guard in Texas. We are entering a very, very dangerous area. And I would also say that the reality of the situation we're in when we talk about things like authoritarianism and stuff is probably that we are actually worse off than we currently think we are, because there's a lag time for a lot of this stuff. And so it's possible that, and I would argue that it's actually more likely that we are in a worse off spot than we currently think that we are, and that we need to really begin to step up and work against this. And I will reiterate again, when I say step up and fight against this, I am not talking about physical violence. I'll talk more about, what I think we kind of can do in a little bit. But we do not need to be activating each other in this violent way. A couple things to remember. One is that everybody on that street, whether they are protesters or business owners or law enforcement or fire department or whatever, like, these are our neighbors and family, and we do not want to harm them. But at the same time, we cannot allow this obvious move towards authoritarianism to proceed. And a lot of people have been talking about authoritarianism and there's a lot of academic kind of talk about that. But the big thing that I think is very telling is the Trump administration's recent, like, broad executive action, where if you go through and you read it, it's it's very clear they're not specifically talking about Los Angeles. They're not specifically talking about California. The way it is worded is pretty much that they can go in anywhere at any time that they deem, they of course being the administration, the federal administration, that they deem is appropriate to send the military into. That is a very, very concerning and dangerous place to be. First of all, it's illegal. I'm not a lawyer, but there's lots of, legal scholars out there talking about how this is not the way that the Constitution and our law system works. The second thing is it just allows, pretty much untapped power through the use of the military. And the United States is supposed to be the country where this does not happen. The military is specifically designed to be separated from sort of internal domestic actions so that the federal government and the powers that be, whether it's the president or whoever, cannot utilize that power in an oppressive way. Like, that is the basis of one of our values for this country, is that we are not under the subjugation of our military. The military is used and controlled by a civilian, and it is used for very clear, official sort of uses, if you want to call it that or whatever. Public safety is important, but the military is not the tool that we use for domestic public safety. That is not, it's not their responsibility. And this is entering into a very, I've said it before, a very dangerous time here. This executive, this order, that came out over the weekend, I hesitate to say is giving the president the ability to move troops in the military into anywhere, because the White House just made it. They just put it out there, right? It's not like some legally binding document. It's not really even really based on anything. It's just like they said, hey, this is what we can do. And that brings us to the crux of what the next 4 years will be like. In every step of the way, and everything that's going to go on, it is going to be, they say that they can do this, and they're not overtly going to say it. It's just the implication is now, come and stop us. So they're just going to do whatever they want. They're going to do ICE raids and come in and raid communities and arrest people whenever they want. They are going to go to courthouses and go to immigration hearings and then arrest these people after they're done with their immigration hearings, which of course is going to disincentivize people from coming to the courthouse, because why would you go to the courthouse if there's a risk of you getting imprisoned and deported? So that's going to mess around with how the courts work and the judicial system works. It's going to create a mess. It's going to create distrust in our judicial system, where there already is a lot of distrust. And it is the basis of how bullies work, right? They do stuff because they don't think anybody will stand against them. We've seen time and time again that Trump and his administration will cave when people push against them. And I don't think that this will be any different, but we do need to be careful that we are not giving them the ability to sort of justify the actions that they're doing. And this is where the nonviolence kind of comes in. Because if something really bad happens, and I think, obviously we can make the argument the bad things have already happened, but let's just say there's a step above this, right? That could give them the justification that they need to come in and do far, far worse things. I, for one, I do not want to see that. I do not want to live in this world again where America is violence on the streets. I think that we have an opportunity now to, I guess, put our flag in the ground and be like, this is not acceptable. This is not who we are as a country. This is the direction that we want to go. That's why I'm running for Senate, because I have a vision where we are investing in each other and we are providing each other the freedom and the opportunities to lead meaningful lives, and also giving each other the space to do that in a way that makes sense for them. understanding that it may not make sense for me or for, my community or whatever. I think that is a much grander place for us to be than under this constant worry of a military crackdown, which leads to my sort of next point, which is, I mentioned a second ago, the step above, right? Like, the way that authoritarianism works, the way that bullying works, the way that a lot of this stuff works is that they just keep pushing you, right? They just keep pushing you because they know based on history that you won't push back. And then at some point, you will push back, right? I think of this is perhaps a silly example, but think of like a bully on the playground that just keeps pushing the little nerdy kid and just keeps taunting him and taunting him and taunting him. And then all of a sudden, the little kid takes a swipe at him and punches the bully. I think a lot of us in the back of our mind, for kids, we don't want kids fighting at all, right? But for the purposes of this conversation, a lot of us would be like, that bully deserved it, right? This little kid didn't deserve it. This bully deserved what was coming to him. But now there is a set of actions that come into place because the little kid who was being taunted is now using physical force against the bully. That's what they're looking for, right? That's what they want so they can have a justification. My argument, though, and one of the reasons that I'm in this Senate run to begin with, is that I think we are already well past the line. That extra step where it's like, okay, well, they're going to take this step, then we're going to come into action. We're going to take this step, they're going to do this thing, and then that's going to be one step too far. I think we are already there. I think that we are in an extremely challenging place for us to get out of, and that the longer that we wait to start making meaningful decisions and making our voice heard and setting a vision for what we want the future to be. I think that's the big thing too, is like, at least on the Democrat side, a lot of people, including myself, are just constantly like, what is the vision for the Democratic Party? What are we looking for here? And so I, for one, this is an easy one, right? I do not want a world of violence and anger. I do not want a world where we are throwing people in trucks, vans off the street, where unidentified police officers or law enforcement officers are covering their face and their badges, coming in, picking up random people, throwing them in a van. We have no idea what's going on with them. We have no idea where they are. We don't even know if they're here illegally because no due diligence is being done. I don't want to live in that world. And so I'm straight up saying we are not going to do that. Like, I am going to be fighting for an America that treats people with kindness and respect while still understanding that we need to stay within the law and that we need to have, a secure border, for example, and that we need to have an immigration system that functions. And so for me, we've already kind of crossed the Rubicon, or whatever you want to call it, whatever metaphor you would like to use. We're already that step above. And this continual use of this sort of broad authority is just going to get scarier and scarier. And so I am encouraging folks, if you're listening to this video, if you see me about, feel free to come and talk to me. But it's time for us to really, really stand up and fight against this. And when I say that, what I mean is that we fight it by showing them that we are not pushovers and that we are not going to fucking back down. That doesn't mean being violent, but that means when they want to push past us, we do not let them. If they want to come into our homes and our places of worship and our schools, then they need to do it the correct way, the legal way. They need to have warrants. It needs to be clear what they are doing. And so we don't just have random police officers, grabbing people off the streets. And I'll remind you, I was not a police officer, but I did work with the Department of Public Safety here at Ohio State University for about 8 years. I worked with police officers, FBI, Homeland Security, Secret Service, the fire department, lots of folks. And my vast workings with them, time and time again, like 99% of the time, was that these people were professionals, that they wanted to help people and take care of people, and that they were trying to do the right thing. So again, I would encourage you too, if you are listening to this and you're in law enforcement, it's also your time to step up and internally set the stage for what expectations are for professionalism and appropriate conduct. So we are going to step up. We are going to help each other. We're going to do it with kindness, and we're also going to do it with strength. And we are not going to leave any room, any space on the floor for this kind of evil and this kind of just activities. We're just not going to do it, right? I will sit down and have a conversation with anyone who wants to have a conversation about keeping our borders safe, about the proper, immigration policies, about all of that. I'm happy to have that conversation with anybody. But we are not going to do it at the end of a gun or at the bottom of a boot. When our neighbors, our friends, family, neighbors are just being scooped up willy-nilly for no reason, and again, without due process. And I'll remind you, I think I did a due process video maybe a month ago, but everybody gets due process. Every person in this country gets due process. And I know for some reason that sounds like controversial. It shouldn't. And to be honest, you cannot deport anybody without due process, because without due process, you don't know if they're illegal or not. Without sending somebody through the process of investigation and making sure that they are appropriately here or inappropriately here or whatever it is, you don't know if they should be deported. And that's evidenced by the Trump administration deporting a couple people that should not have been deported and arresting American citizens. And the Trump administration has admitted that they have made mistakes. The purpose of due process is to alleviate, ideally eliminate, but no process is perfect, but at least alleviate these mistakes from happening. And then we can have actual conversations and find actual solutions to problems. So that's sort of the first thing, is we are going to stand up. We are going to expect the level of professionalism and legality that American law enforcement is supposed to have. And we are not going to give space or quarter to this intolerance and evil. And we're going to do that nonviolently, as I said before. The second thing that I think we need to do, and I don't know if this is easier or harder, to be honest, because I think we're all feeling pretty exhausted right now with what's going on, is that we need to be helping and supporting each other in the ways that they need supported. I think there's a lot of maybe trepidation or anxiety right now about making sure that we're taking care of everybody. And we want to jump into action, but we're not actually spending time talking to the people that we are trying to help to make sure that we are helping them in the way that they need helping. Another of my backgrounds is in public health, and that was a very common thing in public health, particularly in the past. It's much better now, where people come into communities and they're like, oh, we're here to help you, and you should do this, this, and this, without talking to the community and finding out what they actually need. And then they're like, well, why isn't any of this stuff working? Well, it's like, because that's not what they asked for, or maybe it's not attainable. It's like, you should be doing this, but like access to whatever it is just not available. So I don't know, food's an example. Like, you should be, eating healthier foods. And so we want to help you get access to healthier foods. It's like, that's great. That's wonderful. But like, if you live in a food desert and you don't have a car, then your option is the corner market and whatever happens to be at that corner market or the bodega or whatever. So that's just an example. We need to be talking to everybody and understanding what their needs are. And I've been trying to do that by going out and doing my community chats just to listen to people, just to hear what's going on in your mind. So start engaging with your neighbors, asking them questions and listening to them. And that's how I think we're going to start to build this coalition that is going to be supportive, and that's going to help get people maybe not excited to do this, but at least motivated to start making these changes, which leads me to my last sort of point here. But before I do my last point, I'm going to kind of give a little silly example of the dark part that I think we might potentially be heading into. And it has to do with V for Vendetta. So if anybody's watched the movie V for Vendetta, read the comic books, but mostly in the movies, there's a moment in there where there's a police detective who is he's investigating this terrorist incident that happened, and he's talking to another one of his detective partners, and he's kind of laying out what he thinks has happened. what happened in the terrorist incident, and also what's happening right now, sort of socially and politically, and where he thinks it's going to go. And there's a moment in there where he talks about the chancellor, who is the sort of primary antagonist in that movie. And he says that the chancellor, all this stuff is going to keep building. There's going to become protests, and then military is going to be deployed, and all this stuff's going to get building. And the chancellor is going to resort to violence because that's all he knows. And I want us to be very, very careful here. That's always sort of stuck with me, is that people at the end of the day, particularly people who are not interested in actually solving problems, and I firmly believe that the Trump administration is not interested in actually solving real problems. And you can see that by just everything that they do is sort of superficially deep. And they never ask questions down the line to actually find the answers to stuff. That's part of a different video. We can talk about that later. But Trump is a bully. He has used power and influence, money, the legal system to get his way and to push people pretty much all of his life. And he is somebody like, that's all he knows. That's what has worked for him. And that's what is going to continue to work for him if we allow it. So at the end of the day, I do have a serious worry that things will get violent because violence is all he knows. He knows bullying, he knows aggression, and he's going to use those things. And I think we all need to be mindful and prepared for that. I do not think we need to do violence on our part. We do not need to do anything like that to push against this, but we need to be aware of it and we need to be prepared for it. And that leads me to my last comment here, is that I know a lot of us are scared. A lot of us are worried about what is going on, and rightfully so. You're not crazy. You are not overreacting. Your concerns are legitimate, for sure. However, I do want to remind you that these people are not the brightest people in the room. They are cruel and vindictive, but they are not the smartest people in the room. They do not know how any of these systems work, which is why they're trying to break them and make them work the way they want, because they don't know how the systems work and they don't care how the systems work. And they're not interested in any of things like checks and balances and making sure that the president has restricted power in our, three branches of government that are supposed to be all co-equal, right? He doesn't care about any of that because he wants power, influence, and money. But he's also a fool. And he is surrounding himself with people who are also not the brightest bulbs. These are not our top people that we're sending into our leadership positions. Additionally, all of these people are opportunistic cowards. It's a pit of vipers. And we saw that last week evidenced a little bit with the fight between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. These folks, when, I'll say it, the shit hits the fan, the knives will come out and they will start stabbing each other in the back. And they will tear each other down. They will lie to each other. They will throw each other under the bus. And the top person to do that will be Donald Trump. There is nobody in this cabinet. There's nobody else in any of this position that will, he will be happy to throw any of them into the alligator pit. Okay? That is a strength for us who want to live in a better world and don't want to have to be constantly doing these fights. But we do need to remember that as this gets further and further on, more and more people in that orbit are going to start to have their backs against the walls. As more and more of these people, your JD Vances, your Marco Rubios, your Pete Hegseths, your whoever's, right? As they get further and further down this rabbit hole and possibly further into illegality and corruption, their backs are going to be up against the walls, and they're going to be in a point potentially where they have to continue to support Trump, because otherwise the legal risk to them is going to be astronomical. And that, my friends, is where the true terror of authoritarianism comes in. When you have a bunch of people that not only are idealizing this man, but are also now scared for themselves and feel like they don't have any outs. And so they have to stick with him because if he fails, they're going to go to jail. So we cannot allow that to happen. We need to keep our eye on the prize and stay focused. We need to support each other. We need to walk out the door every day trying to do the best we can for each other and for this society so that our kids, our grandkids, the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years of our country is the world that we want to live in. And I firmly believe that we can do that, but we're going to have to get through some dark places to do it. But I urge you, I promise you, for whatever you believe from me, whatever you believe I'm going to say, is that we can get through this and we can make a better world. These folks right now that are pushing their agenda and what they want to see, they will not be here forever. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but Trump has no moral center. He has no sort of ideological center other than him and what he can accrue. And that works for a while, but it won't last. It won't last. It never does. Because eventually the vipers around him are going to start stabbing each other in the back, and that's all going to fall apart. The systems that he set into place will start to fall apart because they don't have any actual underpinnings, legal, moral, or otherwise. But in order for that to happen, we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep pushing for a better, brighter future where we are taking care of each other and we are reinvesting in all of us so that we can live the lives that we want to live. And as a final thought, I will remind you, when I say we, I mean all of us in this country. I don't mean just Democrats. I don't mean just blue states or whatever. I am talking about fighting for all of us and the brighter future that I know is ahead. So hopefully I've alleviated some of your concerns. I don't know. We're in a tough spot. We're in a rough spot, but I just want you to know that I am here for you. I am here if you want to talk to me or ask me questions, if you want me to come out to any groups. I am here trying to do the best that I can to fight against this rampant push towards darkness. And I'm not going anywhere. So hopefully that gave you sort of a lay of the land from my thoughts and maybe a little bit of a brighter vision of where we might be able to go. Obviously, I'll have other videos about more specific things that we can kind of do and ways that you can be involved in your community or in the protests or whatnot. I would say that the Columbus Pride is this weekend. I would encourage you to go to the Pride Parade and the Pride event and try to be as positive and uplifting as you can. There is also the No Kings rally that's happening this weekend. There's a bunch of other protests and things happening. I would encourage you to attend those, even if protests aren't your thing. I get that. I totally get it. I would encourage you to just go, be safe, be prepared, but just go. You don't have to be in the thick of it. You can always kind of stand at the back. Go for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You don't need to chant. You don't need to have a bullhorn. Just be there. Talk to other people. I've found when I've gone to the protests that the people I'm talking to are just normal folks that are looking for better. They just want better. And frankly, I think we deserve better than this, and I'm going to fight for it. So everybody, thank you all for watching. This was a much longer video than my normal ones. And I hope that you are able to have a good Wednesday. And I wish you the best. I wish you peace. And I will see you in the next video.